Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on climate change and carbon neutrality. It's lovely to see so many of you here. I'm watching to see how many participants we have. My name's Laurel Jackson, and I'm the Director of Postgrad Education in the Business School here at Western Sydney University. And it's my great pleasure to introduce you to two of our professors who are going to spend the next half an hour sharing with us their knowledge of what we as business people can do to proactively move towards carbon neutrality. Professor Yi-Chen Lan is a Pro Vice Chancellor and Professor of Information Management. And Professor Kinglian Tan, who we call affectionately QT, is Professor of Accounting and a team leader of our Carbon Accounting and Sustainability Research Group. Look, I'm sure you're going to have some questions as we go through, and you can put those in the chat. We would like you to put your email addresses in there too, so that we can answer you personally for whatever questions you have. And we will make sure that we get back to each one of you. So I'm going to hand over now to Professor Yi-Chen.
Thank you, Laura. Good day, everyone. This is a timely webinar, as on 9th of August, just a couple of weeks ago, IPCC Working Group 1 report, the Climate Change 2021, the Physical Science Basis released, which provides more detailed regional assessment of climate change. And I would like to draw everyone's attention that the report reconfirms the importance of taking immediate action for greenhouse gas emission reductions in a monumental scale in order to meet the target set by Paris Agreement to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. Through the scientific assessment and observations, human-caused greenhouse gas emissions accounts for the temperature rise to at least 1.5 degrees Celsius in the next few decades, if we don't make radical change to our behaviors in interacting with the environment. So business community plays a pivotal part towards the greenhouse gas reductions. Now we have a much clearer picture of the climate impact. It's time for the business community to not only think about what we need to do, but how to prepare for it, specifically to reach net zero CO2 emissions. So today we are talking carbon neutrality. As you can see on the slides, the next slides, that the disturbing image published a couple of months ago, that Amazon forest now emits more carbon dioxide than it can absorb due to the fire. So we look at, to better understand what we are facing. You can see the slides, the next slides, the four figures illustrates how we are tracking in CO2, greenhouse gas emissions, and non-renewable energy source consumptions, including fossil fuel and coal for the last 5 decades. For instance, the latest figure in 2018 shows the total world carbon emissions is more than 32 million kilotons. It is around 4.5 metric tons per capita. In terms of the world greenhouse gas emissions, it is observed that a continuous upward trend with over 45 million kilotons CO2 equivalent emissions in 2018. Although there's decreasing consumptions of fossil fuel and coal, we are still needed to deploy more renewable energy facility to accommodate world's energy needs. So how do organizations impact environment? Well, first of all, organizations need to identify their business activities which were involved in obtaining natural resources directly to their operations and any environmental damages. For example, direct greenhouse gas emissions or industrial wastewater effluent, which is discharged back to the environment through the manufacturing or business processes. And the second category of the environmental impact would be accounted by external entities, such as supply chain stakeholders, as these entities either provide raw materials to the organization or handle products between the organization and the end consumers. And of course, it is important to also consider the environmental impact caused by using products from the consumer end. For example, using low or high energy efficient heaters. Now, net zero. I'm sure that everyone has heard the term net zero through all media channels. So what exactly is net zero? What are the challenges? And how business organizations through their operations to meet net zero target? Well, net zero refers to achieving an overall balance between emissions produced and emission taken out of the atmosphere. Carbon neutrality can be a synonym for net zero emissions. And as you can see from the top figure on the slide, the public awareness of net zero has been an increasing trajectory in the past 5 years. And this is based on Google keyword search. So how the business community contribute towards the net zero targets? What business, before we dive into the development of net zero strategic plan, organizations need to understand what type of carbon emissions through their business operations. Generally speaking, as you can see from the green boxes here, generally speaking, greenhouse gas emissions are categorized into 3 scopes by the most widely adopted international accounting tool, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. Scope 1 covers direct emissions from owned or controlled sources. Scope 2 covers indirect emissions from the generation of purchased electricity, steam, heating, or cooling consumed by the reporting company. And Scope 3 includes all other indirect emissions that occurs in a company's value and supply chain. Business activities related to Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions are quite straightforward and easily to be identified. According to CDP, that's Carbon Disclosure Project, over 80% of emissions reported fall under Scope 3. Although Scope 3 emissions are difficult to identify due to the involvement across external stakeholders of an organization, it is crucial to measure Scope 3 emissions for a complete assessment and representation of greenhouse gas emissions produced by an organization. UN SDGs 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, was initiated and adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015. The SDG agenda enables a shared vision for peace and prosperity for people and the planet across the globe. From the business community perspective, organizations should not only understand the objectives and targets of these goals, but develop appropriate plans to ensure the business operations align towards the SDG agenda. And I would like to highlight particularly in a number of goals that sort of more relevant to the business communities. And these are Goal 6, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation. Goal 7, ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy. Goal 8, promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth. Goal 12, ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. And of course, Goal 13, climate change. So there are many related guidelines and standards available to facilitate business organizations for compliance, enhancement of management and productivity. For example, as you can see on the slides, ISO 9000 standards provides quality assurance guidelines for companies. And from the business environmental management perspective, ISO 14001, a systematic approach to for organizations to improve abilities to manage environmental responsibilities. The framework aims for balancing the three pillars of sustainability through development, transparency, and accountability. So now we need to bring all these together to form a green business transformation strategy. There are increasing number of businesses started paying attention to their sustainable operations, especially how the climate resilience is embedded in the strategic plan and business processes. The purpose to improve swift responses to climate-related risks. However, numerous gaps exist in maintaining day-to-day business operations depending upon different environmental maturity level of the organization. And these practical gaps prevent organizations from progressing towards environmental sustainability. And with the guidelines and standards that I just mentioned it earlier, it is time to integrate all elements into an interconnected green transformation strategy, which is underpinned by the overall organizational strategy and covers not only the organization itself, but across the supply chain stakeholders. And in addition, internal and external factors impacting green business transformation should be identified, evaluated, and addressed. So let's look at another key stakeholders in the business community. When your products reach the market, how are you going to demonstrate the company's environmental responsibility and initiatives to consumers? Well, one approach is to include carbon footprint labels in the product. Through the carbon footprint label, consumers are empowered to make informed purchase decisions, not only just by the product quality and price, but also the information relating to total carbon emissions in the production and distribution phases is also communicated. The evaluation of carbon emissions of an individual product normally is facilitated through the life cycle assessment methodology. And when we look at the circular economy, which is another popular term when we are referring to the sustainable business model. So how business organizations can redesign their processes and operations from the traditional linear approach as what we illustrated on the left side of the slide to the circular economy on the right-hand side. The fundamental concept of circular economy is a regenerative system. So the raw material required from resources, particularly from the natural resources, are reduced, and emission and waste through the production are also minimized. And this can be achieved through embedding eco-design in the product design phase. And that includes modularization for easy maintenance, repair, reuse, remanufacturing, refurbishing, and of course, recycling. Well, limiting global warming is everyone's responsibility. And indeed, climate change is a business problem. In the last 10 minutes or so, I have briefly outlined the positions of the business community under the climate change crisis and identified a number of tools that are available for business organizations to reshape their strategies towards the green business transformation. Now, I would like to invite Professor QT to talk about climate-related risks, opportunity for the business community, and in expected actions and knowledge for decarbonization. Thank you. And here's Professor QT. Is Professor QT online? Professor QT, are you online?
Yes.
I know there's some technical issues. I'm not sure Professor QT
Yeah,
is
that's
online.
okay. Now it's okay. Can you hear me?
Okay, good, great.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Professor Yiqing Lan. And you present an excellent summary of the climate change issues. So next, I'd like to discuss the climate change related risks and opportunities, because not many people are aware of the climate change risks and opportunities. So basically, we have two major types of the climate change risks, including first, physical risks, and which related to the natural environment. For example, climate change causes the increase of the sea level and increase global warming, and which cause some extreme weather and bushfires and water shortage and such sort of things. So many companies are directly or indirectly affected by the physical risks. There's another type of the risks we call transitional risks. And that's coming from the climate change laws and regulations and the carbon tax and the carbon market and so on. So in Australia, about 8 years ago, and the government introduced a carbon tax, which is about $23 per ton. So this means carbon emission is not free, and the carbon emission have a cost. So this is the reason why climate change is a business problem, because climate change and the carbon related regulations, tax, and the price increase the business cost and expense. So someone may say, and climate change is does not matter for business. That's not true. The truth is climate change makes losers and winners. So who is going to be the winners? Who is going to be the losers? I like to introduce a concept called ESG rating. Okay, have you heard about that? ESG rating. And the ESG rating stands for environmental, social, and governance. So who is going to be the losers? And if the company have a low ESG rating, which means the company take no actions, have no idea about the climate change, and this suggesting the company is irresponsible for the climate change. So this company may have big trouble. On the other hand, other companies take expected actions, and these companies are going to have a high level of ESG rating. So these companies are going to have the winner in the climate change transition. Therefore, next, I'd like to tell you, if you want to be a winner, what's the actions you are expected to take, and what the knowledge you are going to obtain for the decarbonization. Decarbonization means the process towards a net zero business model. So there's a number of things you are expected and to do for the decarbonization. The first, you must be aware of the climate change, and some people still, not many, but some people still not recognize and deny the climate change. That's not true. Okay, climate change is happening, and the climate change, the consequences is emerging and getting more and more serious. Number two, you have to consider and how to assess the climate change related opportunities and risks. Why? Because climate risk is very different for different companies. For some companies, climate change is a risk. For other companies, and climate change may be an opportunity. If you have new technology, you use renewable energy, that's the opportunity for these companies. And number three, you have to be very careful how to measure and report in the carbon emissions. And Professor Yiqing have mentioned Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 emissions. Very difficult to measure these emissions. You need expertise and knowledge. And the next, you must prepare a carbon reduction target. What does that mean? A target. Target means the percentage of reduction of emission every year. For example, some company adopt 3% as a target, which means in about 30 years, and the company can achieve a net zero emissions. And some company take 5%, that will take 20 years to achieve carbon neutrality. And many companies adopt 2 and 5% as target, and that takes about 40 years. If you take 33% as a target, this is consistent with the US target. And the US target is by 2050, US will be a zero emission country. EU will be a zero emission country by 2050, and China by 2060. So that's very important, the target. But target, just target. You must take detailed condition, actions. For example, you have to make green investment. Okay, so this is how you achieve the target. You must put money. And the next, you have to have detailed green projects. And broad green projects meet a small target. For example, to renewable energy efficiency, to save water, and that's detailed projects. And finally, and the company are expected to monitor and report and verify carbon emissions. We call the NRV. So all these actions you can see must take step by step. You must first aware, then you assess the risk, then you report and measure emissions. Based on this knowledge, you prepare targets and you take actions to raise money to manage your projects, and then you report your performance. So these needs special knowledge and expertise to manage the green transition.
Thank you so much, Chu T.
Okay.
I've been reading some of the messages in the chat. Some of you are having difficulty in seeing the slides. I'll make sure that you all get the deck afterwards because it's such important information. We need to make sure that everybody has everything that they need to be able to move forward with these initiatives. So Yi Chen and QT have just outlined for you the beginning of what we can do to move ourselves as businesses towards a carbon neutral environment. Now, I'd like them both to just spend a couple of minutes sharing with you some of the amazing initiatives that they've got underway and some of the research that they're currently doing that's related to sustainability and carbon neutrality. So, Yi Chen, would you like to talk to us, or QT, you're going to talk to us first about this?
Our research group called Carbon Accounting Sustainability Research Group at the University, Western Sydney University, and including professors, supervisors, business students. And our focus of the study is on carbon accounting and carbon management. And our group is recognized as the top research group in terms of publications on carbon accounting in the world. And also our research group is the #1 in terms of citations of our research work in business and accounting journals. So our focus is on sustainability, climate change management, and accounting. So I'd like to let you know, Yi Chen has introduced the UN Sustainability Goals in 2015. And our study started from 2010. That is 5 years before the US official announcement of the sustainability goals. And our programs are highly aligned with the UN sustainability goals, particularly the Goal 13, climate action, and the Goal 7, renewable energies. So I suspect, and UN probably may give us a medal for our efforts. So we have a continuous and a long-term commitment and a contribution. Also, I like to share other information with you. And I got a paper to be published on the carbon accounting, management, and finance. And this paper, this book covers almost all the aspects of carbon accounting management. So we talk about GHG emissions, quantifications, carbon management, carbon disclosure assurance, and management of carbon assets and risks. And then we also talk about green finance and green project management. And also we discuss new technologies such as big data, blockchain, and IoT, and that technology can be used to strengthen the carbon management systems. So this book can be used for our NBA programs. And our NBA programs has been revised, has been upgraded in a response to the UN sustainability goals. And we introduced new NBA units, including environmental management, sustainability, and carbon accounting. So I can tell you, and we offer these new NBA programs and units, and not many other universities are doing and give you these opportunities. So this is the main point of this webinar. So I ask you a question, okay? are you ready? Are you ready to contact us? Because we want you to be a winner. So we are waiting for you, my friend. Yiqing, please.
Thank you, Professor QT, for brief introduction of your research team and the outstanding performance of your research in this area. So this slide just quickly show you I'm part of the research team currently working on an energy saving and optimization project in the National Vegetable Protected Cropping Center at Western Sydney University's Hawkesbury campus. And sustainable food production in protected cropping is increasingly rapid in response to global climate change and population growth. However, there's a significant knowledge gap regarding the energy consumption while achieving optimum environmental conditions for greenhouse crop production. So this project looks at manipulating ventilation status in the greenhouse facility through a multi-point temperature capturing setting to identify heat buildup prior to the cooling system activation to minimize energy consumption. So just give a little bit of information about what my current research is. And if we look at the last slides that I want to just briefly let everyone know that MBA and every other master program at Western School of Business has a business internship components to provide students with a real-life business project and work integrated learning opportunity. Currently, I'm involved in supervising our MBA students who are taking business internships with Food Bank, New South Wales, and ACT. The purpose of this project is to evaluate economics and social impact of supporting the families on low incomes in times of crisis, such as the current COVID-19 pandemic outbreak in New South Wales, and of course, through some school breakfast programs. So there are many industry-based internship projects available for our business students. And I would like to thank everyone and also thank Laura for initiating this webinar for Professor QT and myself to share our thoughts on climate change and this important project. Laura, thank you.
Thank you, Yiqing, and thank you, QT. There's been so much interest. Some of the questions and comments in the chat are going to take you quite a while to answer, I think. And there's some wonderful suggestions there about what we need to do next to provide more information, which I think is what we will plan to do. Thank you so much to everyone who's been a part of our webinar today. Thank you for all of your contributions. We will make sure that you can get the recording and the slides. We'll try and answer every single question that you've asked. You're giving some wonderful feedback to me now. I'm just reading it in the chat. You can also email us through our alumni email at Western Sydney, which is there on the screen. And that will be the best channel for you to make sure that you get a copy of everything that's been spoken about today and a recording if you would like one. And please, if you have any suggestions about extra information that you would like from these two wonderful professors who are doing such fantastic work, we'd be very happy to hear from you. So I'll say good afternoon for now, but see you soon.